Great. Thank you, Nomi, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on planning for next school year. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your very busy days to join us today. So my name is Clarissa Hayes, and I will be moderating today's event on behalf of FRAC. So today's webinar will focus on considerations for the upcoming school year when it comes to school and out-of-school time meal service, with a special focus on options under the current waivers and then strategies for collecting school meal applications. So we definitely know that there are still many unknowns when it comes to the 2021-2022 school year, including what the school day may look like in every community. But the recent extension of the nationwide waivers provides school districts a much needed time and consistency for planning. So with the school year winding down in many states, now is an opportune time to evaluate what worked and what didn't work this year and how that can help shape the upcoming school year. We have three incredible school district speakers joining us today who will be sharing insight on their thought process for next school year, including what they're thinking around meal service models, menus, and more. And we definitely know that this conversation and planning will change over the next few months as we continue to get guidance and more information. But we wanted to create this space today to brainstorm and ask questions of today's speakers. So we definitely have a lot to cover and hope you leave with some new ideas for the upcoming school year. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm actually going to let all of our speakers fully introduce themselves when they present, but here is a snapshot of what we will be covering and who will be sharing today. So again, my name is Clarissa Hayes with FRAC. I'm going to start us out with a brief waiver review, an overview of a new resource that we've created, and then some opportunities before turning it over to our other speakers. And those other speakers are Amanda Miller, who is the Director of Food and Nutrition for the Des Moines Public Schools. Next, we have Vladislav Figueroa Jr., Senior Director of Student Nutrition Services with Compton Unified School District. And then last but not least, we'll hear from Jennifer Craig, who is the Assistant Director of Nutrition and Menu Operations at the Garland Independent School District in Texas. And as always, we will leave time at the end for questions for any of our speakers, so feel free to use that Q&A function on your screen to ask those questions, and we will get to those at the end of today's event. All right, so like I mentioned, I wanted to start by giving an overview of the waivers and what we know will be available for the upcoming school year. So the biggest change for the upcoming school year is that schools and community sponsors will no longer be able to use the summer food service program outside of the summer months. As I'm sure everyone knows, summer food has been the option year-round since pretty much the beginning of COVID-19. And instead, schools can choose to operate the seamless summer option in place of the school breakfast program and the National School Lunch Program. And through this flexibility, schools can serve meals to all children at no charge. Meals served through SSO during the upcoming school year must follow the school breakfast and lunch nutrition standards. So again, they can't use that summer food meal pattern, but they will be reimbursed at that higher summer food service program reimbursement rate. One thing that I wanted to flag is that while schools are not required to use SSO during the 21-22 school year, it offers many benefits. Like I mentioned, it does allow schools to serve all children breakfast and lunch at no charge, which really does reduce the administrative burden on school nutrition departments, while also ensuring that all children have the nutrition they need to succeed in school. Schools that continue to operate NSLP and the school breakfast program under the normal rules are reimbursed based on that student's eligibility for free or reduced price meals at the lunch and breakfast rates, which is lower than the summer food rate available through the SSO waiver in the upcoming school year. The other thing I would flag here is that many state agencies are requiring some kind of paperwork for SSO for the upcoming school year, which may be as simple as an addendum to the school's NSLP application. The SSO waiver is also available beginning July 1st, 2021, so schools may find it advantageous to switch over to that program before the beginning of the school year. So in addition to that, many of the waivers that have been available around meal service remain an option. So that includes the non-congregate, the meal service time flexibility, parent pickup waivers, which will allow schools to continue to use meal distribution methods that work best for their students, including home delivery, grab and go, curbside pickup, and multiple meal distribution. And this obviously is important as many schools continue to rely on those hybrid or remote instruction models. In addition to these waivers, there's also the meal pattern flexibility, but this is more targeted and limited compared to the previous meal pattern waiver, and schools must request and receive approval to implement this flexibility on a case-by-case basis. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention here is just the waivers around the after-school suppers and snacks. So schools and community programs are able to apply for and serve free meals and or snacks regardless of the location during the 21 to 22 school year. And additionally, many of those flexibilities for CACFP and after-school meals are still available, including that non-congregate, but an enrichment or educational component is still required. And then we do have a resource that we continue to update as we learn more about the waivers. So feel free to check out our nationwide waiver tracker, which is linked here and will be shared out with all of the information after today's event. All right, next slide, please. And then quickly, before we turn it over to our amazing speakers, I did want to just highlight one resource that we created as a part of today's webinar. So this resource is called Planning for the 21 to 22 School Year, Considerations and a Checklist. And obviously, again, we know that things will be changing, and this is really to help schools brainstorm and maybe think about new options for the upcoming school year. So it includes an overview of the waivers, some considerations and opportunities for next year, including looking at CEP, school meal applications, things to know about transition to seamless summer option, supporting PEBT rollout if that's still happening in your state, and then looking more closely at after-school suppers and snacks. So I do want to talk about 3 of these opportunities briefly before handing it over to our speakers. So the first one that I wanted to call out that's mentioned in this resource is to elect CEP. And I know that this probably sounds a little silly to be talking about CEP right now, considering that school districts can offer free meals to all students in the upcoming school year through the summer nutrition waivers. But at FRAC, we are encouraging schools that are not doing CEP to elect it this year in order to lock in their current identified student percentage, or that ISP. And that's because that may be higher than normal given the economic impact of COVID-19 on families, and that will be available for the next 4 years after we come out of the pandemic. So a great thing that happened during the pandemic through the waivers is that there is a nationwide waiver that states could extend the deadline to adopt community eligibility through September 30th, 2021, which is great. And we have a lot of resources at FRAC that help to support this. So we have a grouping tool where you can group schools together to increase an ISP and maximize that claiming percentage. And then we also have 2 financial calculators, which can help you determine the participation needed to break even and compare implementing CEP to your current operation. So again, a lot of great resources. And if you're interested in CEP, we have people at FRAC who would love to talk to you about it. All right, next slide. The other bucket that I outlined in the resource I mentioned earlier and that we have some more resources on is around collecting school meal applications. And with school districts across the country offering free meals, many schools have actually found it difficult to collect these school meal applications or other multi-purpose income forms if they're doing CEP. And the thing about these forms is that they're often used for more than just certifying students for free or reduced price school meals. They can also help with linking families to other benefits like waiving testing fees or participating in pandemic EBT, and then are used in some cases to distribute some types of education funding. So we know that this is still very critical to some states and that there's a need around messaging and to get these back. So we have a resource called Strategies to Increase Applications for School Meals that have some sample graphics you can use in your community, as well as some of the identified best practices that we've gleaned from schools across the country. So translating application materials, increasing the availability of the application, helping parents navigate that, and then also working with trusted members of the community. So I did want to plug this as we start to think about the upcoming school year, because we do know that this has been something on many school districts' minds. All right, and last but not least, just wanted to quickly talk about after-school meals. This really is a win-win for communities and students. And like I mentioned earlier, there are a number of waivers that support schools and community after-school meal sponsors, such as allowing programs to operate in areas that don't meet that 50% area eligibility threshold, sending meals home. So if schools aren't participating or maybe are serving snacks, they can consider serving suppers if they are doing snacks right now. And many more schools may be eligible. And the last thing I'll mention here is that this is also important because we know in recently released guidance from USDA that schools can't do weekend meals through the seamless summer option, but they can do weekend meals through CACFP. So just one thing to flag as you're thinking ahead, if you have been doing weekend meals, that would only be available through the supper program. All right, so that is more than enough for me. We're going to go ahead and turn it over to our first speaker. And starting us off again today is Amanda Miller, who is the Director of Food and Nutrition at Des Moines Public Schools. So Amanda, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here. It is quite a privilege and an honor. We are here in Des Moines, Iowa, so our theme is we're building back stronger in FY22. So we are excited to get going. So next slide, please. Really, our mission and vision is that we are going to improve education through nutrition. And our hashtag that we have branded ourselves is that we're more than meals. And I think that's important for people to think about and remember as we're working through all the different programs that we help support and do, and the collaboration that it's taken amongst the school district to get a lot of these programs off the ground. Because we do believe in success for our students, and that's providing access to nutritious and delicious meals. And every day should be an educational opportunity through the serving line. So it's a great time to be in school nutrition. Next slide, please. A little bit about Des Moines Public Schools. We're located in Des Moines, Iowa, which is an urban school district. It's the largest school district in Iowa. So not to say a whole lot. Our friends in Iowa here. So we have 33,000 students and 64 schools. Next slide. We do have 72% free and reduced, however. So in our 64 schools, we range anywhere from 98% free and reduced all the way down to 21% free and reduced. So across the city, there's definitely the have and the have-not. And as we've been working in CEP, we have really talked about access, and it's not about so much the poor kids and the rich kids, or the bus kids and the parent drop-off kids. It's about providing access to everyone. We have a strong participation rate. So in our elementary breakfast in the classroom program, we hover right between 65 to 70% participation for all of our elementary schools. For lunch, district-wide lunch, it's usually between 75 and 85%. And these are from numbers from 2019, before the pandemic hit. I don't know if you guys maybe are smarter than I am in this regard. Our computer system does not link with our state claiming system. So everything that we have had to do in regards to the SFSP claims and tallies and everything has had to be manual. So that has required a lot of work in regards to adding and subtracting. So it's been pretty exciting. So we still believe we're right around between 75 to 80% district lunch participation. We are a CEP partial district. So there, out of our 64 schools, there are only 9 schools that do not belong in a CEP group. However, because of the SFSP ruling or waiver last year, we were allowed to feed all students at no cost. We saw great increases for students that came to eat that were enrolled in schools. And we're going to continue with the SSO option into FY22. We are lucky enough to have a central kitchen where we have a central nutrition center. And most schools we consider bake-off kitchens, which would be finishing kitchens. We have a few satellite kitchens that are left in elementary schools, but there's really only 2. So most kitchens really just finish the product when it gets there, and we have really nice product that comes out of our Central Nutrition Center. Next slide, please. Since we were able to do everything manually, we were able to create some pretty great graphs in regards to what participation looks like. So the beginning of the graph is school-wide 18-19. So the green bar is total meal equivalents. Lunch is red and breakfast is blue. And so we use the 3-2 breakfast meal equivalent. So you can see school-wide, and I just usually use the green line to look at things. It's easier for my brain here. So it's usually in school-wide 18-19, we hovered right around 300,000 meal equivalents in school year 18-19. When we started this tracking in, it looks like November 2nd of 2020, our CFO wanted to look at what it looked like every week. So we could see if we needed to furlough employees or participation wise, what it looked like. Iowa has been a hot topic for public policy and politics in regards to the pandemic. And Des Moines Public Schools was in the hot seat for many of the things that happened. So we needed to have a return to learn plan that was 50% compliant of in-person learning. And the school board decided that that was not acceptable. So we defied the state's order. And in so when we started, we were 100% virtual. So we started the school year completely virtual. In November there, we started back in hybrid a little bit, and then we dropped down to completely virtual when we had a big outbreak. We came back, hybrid. Then we had spring break. And then another big public policy switch was in February 15th, the governor required that all states, that all school districts send their students back to 100% in-person learning on February 15th. So we had all kids back in school February 15th and on for the rest of the school year. I bring this up, and I want to show you this simply because of our claim. So you can see the difference between where we ended our claim reimbursement for April and May. We claimed more, I know, we claimed more money than we would have in those same months in 18 and 19 under NSLP school breakfast. And that was simply because of the claim reimbursement. So we were still feeding fewer students and had fewer meals that we were serving, but because of the higher claim percentage, we were able to still have over a $2 million claim, which is high for us in those months because of that claim reimbursement. So that's really a big factor in looking at NSLP, school breakfast, seamless summer, and that claim reimbursement, where that your school will fall and how you can budget out. Next slide, please. So again, all school districts, significant public policies, all school districts were required 100% in-person learning February 15th, 2021. So then we could really see what was happening. We did have about 40% of our students that stayed virtual. And so we had set up some things for those kids to eat. And then in the last week of school, we had a significant drop down where the governor required that public buildings could not require masks. And so we saw families take kids out of school for the last week due to low vaccination rates and bullying. So we threw away a lot of food that week when we thought we knew where we were going. And then all of a sudden that last week of school, there was, we were missing 40 to 50 kids out of every grade level at every school because of this mask requirement that came out. So it would be interesting to see what could have been if that mask requirement wouldn't have happened. Next slide, please. So our plan for 2022 is we're going to party like it's 2019. We really don't have any other options. Our state legislatures have determined that we will be back in school 100%. We do have a virtual campus for 500 middle school kids and 1,500 high school kids. But of the 33,000 school kids, everyone else besides those 2,000 kids will need to be back on campus 100% in-person learning. So we will be using the seamless summer option, and we will be moving meals back into the cafeteria. So we'll be needing to use the fresh fruit and vegetable bars, the choice bars, because there's no way that the staff of 400 that I supervise can feed these 33,000 students without using some of those self-service options. Before we were able to kind of pre-plate and cup up some things and do some deliveries to the classroom when we had 60% of the students in the building, and even less during the hybrid model. But now that everyone is coming back to school, we're going to be fully staffed at buildings that have 700 kids, 1,000 kids, 2,000 kids in buildings. So we're going to have to go back to self-service options. Really some good things that came out of the pandemic, though, is that we expanded breakfast in the classroom to grades 6 through 8. And we got some great grants through some partners. So we will be keeping breakfast in the classroom. We were really proud of our breakfast in the classroom model for kindergarten through 5th grade. And now we were able to extend it to grades 6 through 8. And there is a picture of a little kindergartner in 2019 that was enjoying his first day breakfast in the classroom. So next slide, please. One thing that also happened was we lost many employees due to COVID. So they quit or found different jobs or whatever. So we need to have a very aggressive hiring approach. We have approximately 25% of our workforce that we need to hire back, approximately 100 positions to hire. So we'll be giving a hiring bonus. I gave employees a wage increase, a large wage increase, those that stayed with me. We're doing job fairs. We're advertising at summer meal sites. I said, if you want to dress me up as a banana and have me interview employees, potential employees, I will. Anything that I can do for people to come and want to work here. It's a great place to work. So this hiring approach is really going to be the thing that is going to need to make or break if we can pull this off for next year, because if we don't have staff, we're not going to be able to feed the kids. So next slide. So here is some of the self-service things that we do. And I really think the partnerships, again, that we have been able to collaborate with have been amazing through the pandemic. So the people in the blue polos are my nutrition staff, but the lady in the green, she is a community schools coordinator. We have parents that come and volunteer. We have administrators, we have social workers. So currently we have this whole community approach of helping kids get food. And so it's not just my staff anymore. It's really turned into a we moment where we have all of these different people, success workers, social workers, all these different people that are helping our students get this access to food, because just like we talked about, there's no way my staff that's 25% down are going to be able to do this until we get fully back in staff. And so those partnerships have really been an impressive thing that we've been able to do and will continue to do and build upon as we move forward with this. Next slide, please. So we'll continue to do nutrition education. So we'll continue to do Pick a Better Snacks, school gardens, and all this stuff kind of signifies still that we're back, we're building back better than ever. We're more than meals, and we really want people to know that we're here, we're proud, we're ready to stay, and we don't have any other choice. We're gonna party like it's 2019. So bring on the watermelon fresh fruit and vegetable bar. So I think that's it for me. So thank you very much. Oh, I do have one more slide. Sorry. So one thing that we will be doing is that we will be continuing to add more CEP schools. So our goal of being district-wide CEP within 4 years, we will continue to send out free and reduced applications. When we only have 6 schools or 6 to 7 schools that are not CEP schools, that's where we want those free and reduced applications. We're still doing the PEBT cards. The process has been very bumpy, is the term that I use. And so we're going to keep with that. We've done benefit fairs. We've worked with DHS to try to get people the benefits that they need. We're also going to be increasing second chance breakfast options. So this is a picture of a self-service cart at one of the high schools where it's a grab and go second chance breakfast that people can come and grab at those middle schools and high schools in between the bells. And instead of them running to Starbucks or the convenience store, come and get a meal with us. So we're going to keep expanding and looking ahead on different ways that we can continue to serve kids. I think I'm done now for real. I promise. Thank you.
Yeah, that is. Thank you so much, Amanda. I love your remarks about the partnerships and just the way that you've been able to, in the face of everything COVID-19 threw at you, continue on with the breakfast at the bell and really leverage that into those different breakfast models. So that was fantastic. Thank you so much for that. If you have any questions for Amanda or anything that's happening in Des Moines, feel free to add those to the Q&A box, and we'll make sure to get to those at the end of the webinar. But at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ladislao from Compton Unified School District.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure it is afternoon wherever you are at this point. I know here in the West Coast is already afternoon, so I'm sure it is afternoon anywhere else. First of all, I take this opportunity to express my appreciation to the Food Research and Action Center for the ongoing support to eradicate poverty-related hunger and undernutrition in our country. A great place to start is in our school districts, where we are the foundation and the heart of all communities. A brief introduction of my district. We are in sunny Southern California in Los Angeles County. Our next door neighbor is the nation's second largest school district, that is Los Angeles Unified School District. Having such a large district in our shared neighborhood, it's great because the LA County Department of Public Health, the LA County Office, the California Department of Education are always engaged in student safety, nourishment, and academic success. To give you a visual location of where we are, for those of you who are familiar where Disneyland is, well, Disneyland is on the east-south. Hollywood is on the northwest. Each one about an hour drive from where we are, depending on what time of the day you drive. We have about 21,000 awesome and engaging enrolled students in pre-K through 12th grade in 30 schools. 78% of our students are Hispanic or Latino, and 19% are African American. It takes about 250 of us, passionate nutrition professionals for the successful operation and administration of our meal programs. And I think that is just a low number, because if we really consider others who do not work directly on our programs, but they are our key partners, we talk about maybe plant workers, teachers, principals, human resources, personnel commission, ITD, purchasing, office of superintendent, board members, of course, my immediate supervisor, vendors, and many others. They might not wear a hairnet, disposable gloves or an apron, but they are our key partners in offering a safe, engaging, and fine dining experience to our guests. Yes, I still call them guests, even though they're students. It has to do maybe because I spent about 20 plus years in the private sector. In the private sector, we don't have customers, we have guests. But anyhow, I still sometimes catch myself calling our students or scholars guests. And it has to do because in my personal opinion, nutrition services is the most important department in the entire district. Like I said, that is just my personal opinion. But I will not challenge, other department heads who, if they disagree with me, that just means they're also proud of their own department. The reason behind my personal opinion is that we offer nourishment with healthy menu options. Research from many sources shows that a well-nourished student is more likely to pay attention during class and be well-behaved. A well-nourished student is more likely to retain information and have higher grades. A well-nourished student is more likely to have academic success and graduate. But equally important to us is that our meal programs are conditioning students to develop healthy eating habits for life. As we look ahead to 2021-2022 school year, we are considering what we learned during 2020-21 school year. While we started with distance learning model, we transitioned to a hybrid. We learned to adjust, to implement ongoing changes based on guidance from CDC down to our state and local county Department of Public Health. We switched to SSO in April of 2020. We stayed in SSO during 2020-2021, and we plan to stay on SSO for 2021-22 school year. The meal service models that we're considering are dependent on instruction model. Yesterday, I learned that our plan is for in-person instruction starting in August. So menus will be focused on purchasing IW products and us individually wrapping meals that we're going to prepare. And of course, pending clearance from our local county Department of Public Health, we look forward to bring back our salad bars. This was a very popular dining experience with multiple fresh fruits and vegetables. And they gave our students, our guests, many options to build healthy meals. So how will our guests, our students, have access to meals? We've learned, and this is not new, this is even pre-pandemic, when students are released for lunch, they all run at the same time. So what we discover is that we needed to offer them additional access to meals. So what we started doing last year in preparation for this year is we started buying satellite locations, something that we called our station. Our vendor calls them mini-max, quick cafes, and mobile locations. What it is, like I said, is just an additional outlet. So students have to be less foot traffic instead of all coming to the dining room at the same time. So grab and go will be a key component of either the dining room service, the kiosk locations. But we will still continue. I believe we're implemented. A few schools already started breakfast in the classroom, which it is a very popular program in our district. We offer in all of elementary schools. And I know it is beneficial, all the benefits of breakfast, but we would like it because it gives really, the access to students even while they're having instruction. As much, some have mentioned lunch in the classroom, even though it sounds exciting, we have not been given the green light, mainly because lunch in the classroom, that means that the teachers will not have a duty-free lunch period. So if teachers are in the classroom supervising students while they eat their lunch, then the teachers themselves will not have a lunch-free period. So I'm not sure how soon we can implement or even consider a lunch in the classroom. And speaking of breakfast, one of the key components of nutrition, I think it was a few years ago, and I'm proud to share this. It was FRAC who recognized us as top performers in increasing breakfast participation in our school district. And I believe there were 21 large school districts nationwide that were identified as top performers. I'm proud to say that we were one of only 3 large districts in California. Thank you, FRAC, for recognizing the efforts that we do. Moving on, tips and tricks for collecting school meal applications. The last time we collected meal applications was during the 2010-2011 school year due to implementation of base year for Provision 2. We implemented CEP during 2018-2019 school year, so we have not collected meals applications recently. So part of the CEP, I know Ms. Miller, or I think Ms. Harris talked about the benefit of having CEP, even if we're participating in SSO. It's about locking in that free rate that you may apply for the next 4 years. So we plan on rebasing our CEP on the following school year. So kind of our proactive step is now we're working with our enrollment office to promote CalFresh. CalFresh is for people with low income who meet federal income eligibility rules and want to add to their budget to put healthy and nutritious food on their table. The CalFresh program, federally known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, issues monthly electronic benefits that can be used to buy most foods at many markets and food stores. The CalFresh program helps to improve the health and well-being of qualified households and individuals by providing them a means to meet their nutrition needs. Recipients of CalFresh are identified as, CalPADS. CalPADS is a data system used to maintain the individual level, including student demographics, course data, discipline, assessment, staff assignments, and other data for state and federal reporting. Like I said, because we do plan on rebasing, we're trying to promote the enrollment so that our students can be directly identified next April. Anything about the partnerships that Ms. Miller talked about it, I agree with you. The partnerships start usually within our school district. I mean, it's great to see that in addition to our staff, we see other members being engaged in the service of our meals. And, we also partnered with FRAC and other nonprofit organizations. Obviously, we partnered with California Department of Education, Food Nutrition Services Division, No Kid Hungry, Alderson's Foundation Companies, Nourish California, Food Forward, California School Nutrition Association, CACFP Roundtable, and many others. All of us kind of collaborating, thinking of ways of how we can improve our students' dining experience. So these partnerships are to support on combating food insecurity, And you know, when we talk about also partnerships, we also look at like neighborhoods, districts. And every time something that it brings back to me is when I first started working in a school district, nobody hesitated and helping me, even though I was a complete stranger. When I reached out to them to ask for help, strangers were, you know, eager to help. And that just to show you the kind of close community that we are, that we serve our students. And, you know, one of the ways that we get the word out with the parents and how do we notify them of our meal services is we reach out to them through the district social media accounts, district website, department website, parent square emails, on-campus flyers, department vehicle wrapping, you name it. Even I think one of our vendors has wrapped her vehicles to promote our programs. This is just kind of shows the kind of partnership that we have with others. In addition to breakfast and lunch, we offer supper and snack for after-school meals. We do not serve meals during the weekends, but we offer the equivalent of 7 meals per week. And, you know, one of the questions I get asked, what are the lessons learned? And I have to say, you know, I learned that we as a community of student nutrition professionals, we continue to rise and we do not hesitate to help each other. I've joined many of these webinars and I always learn something new. Just when I feel like, oh, I know how to run my programs, it's like, oh, that's a good observation. They bring up perhaps something new that we can apply or we can at least start. Because if any of you started your career in the private sector, like I did, I spent about 20 plus years in the private sector. Let's face it, we compete with others. We don't share best practice. I don't want to share my recipes. I don't want to share my steps of service. And that was different when I joined a school district. And it's great. It's just to see that instead of competing, we're always helping out each other. And, you know, other lessons I learned is expect the unexpected. What I mean by that is, you know, after having a planning meeting with the management team or in training our frontline nutrition supervisors, I will be driving home only to get that phone call from my supervisor saying, hey, you know what, that plan you have for tomorrow, change it. There's a recommendation for something different. So it's, you know, expected and unexpected. And as more restrictions were implemented and more unexpected phone calls I kept receiving. Something I learned in the private sector, you know, is the saying is be on the table or you're going to be on the menu. So if you're not on the table, you're on the menu. What I mean by that is I learned that, you know, in the last 12 months, I collaborated with more meetings and more partnership with principals than I did the 3 years before. It is great to see that we're included in planning stages. It is great to be on the agenda where we can talk to principals and share the logistics of our programs. So not only can they understand why we do what we do, but also they can be our partners. Because let's face it, if we have multiple schools, there's so many places that I can be at the same time. And having a principal who is engaged and understands that partnership, they're like the first ambassadors to, you know, help answer questions to parents and help answer to students. That is the same, you know, I feel like in the last 12 months, I received more emails, text messages, phone calls, and my private number from my supervisor, you know, superintendent, and board president than I did in the last 3 years previous to that. But that is just to say, you know, we're now part of the conversation. It is no longer just a program. We are a key program to the success of our students. And the fact that, you know, we are part of that, it just shows that we continue to grow, not only within our district, but within our community. You know, going back to lessons we learned, I learned that parents learn about our meal services. And what I mean by that is, you know, sometimes parents don't fully understand what we do. I'm guilty. Before I joined the district, I never understood menus for school because I've never even took the time. So I can understand when I hear parents know and learn about what we do and how impressed they are. It is just to show and confirm that we're always doing all efforts to give, you know, healthy meal options to our students, their children. You know, I'm going to share a personal experience. I forget what school it was. I was leaving at the time during a meal distribution. I was walking in the parking lot and I could hear, I think 3 parents walking in front of me. They were talking to each other like, hey, is that him? And they're like, no, I don't think that's him. Like, it looks like him. He's wearing a face mask, but I don't know who he is. They were speaking in Spanish. As you can hear English is not my second language, but I could understand what they were saying. So I approached them and I say, you know, I might be him. Who is him? And they started laughing because one of them parents recognized me. I have been, I've done a workshop for parents, again, to educate them, to explain about my program. So she was the first one to recognize me. She was the first one to share her appreciation for what we do. She acknowledged that we were playing a key role in her household. Like many parents, you know, who were ordered to stay at home, she and her husband lost their income, but what they didn't see is that our meals did not stop coming to her house. The other parent are also very grateful. You know, I could hear the emotion in their voice. I could see the emotion in their eyes. Even though her children were not at school age, she was just, you know, overwhelmed with the fact that she could come and collect meals for her children. And we were one of those recipients of the farmers to, you know, to families food box. And so the other parent had no children, but she was going home with one of those food boxes, and she could not understand how is that you, as a district, can give us food even though I don't have children. You know, when we say we serve the community, we don't mean just the students. It just shows the commitment and the passion we have, and that has, unfortunately, it took COVID for parents to realize how much we really do to serve our students, to serve our community, and it kind of brought me, you know, and I know to say, like, you know, we do this every day. It's too bad that not every day community members realize what we do. If I may, I'll share just one more story because I think I might be running out of time. I think it was a few months ago that I was at the grocery store, and I run into a former coworker. When I mean former coworker, she and I used to work together many years ago as servers in a restaurant at Disney's California Adventure. And we started talking about, you know, life during COVID. She talked about how it had affected her business. Her business had to close because of COVID, and she was obviously frustrated, was depressed and sad. And she kind of asked me, "How do you feel about your restaurants closing?" I forgot to tell her that I had transitioned from the private sector to the public sector. So I had to explain to her that my restaurants, also known as cafeterias, not only did they not close, they actually started offering additional meals to, you know, other community members. And even though I explained it to her in different ways, she could not understand the rationale of how we continue to serve while other restaurants have closed or gone out of business. You know, and it reminded me, going back to when we used to work together, she, my God, every single day that we worked together, all she did was talk about her favorite actor and her favorite movie. I don't know if you probably recognize the name Leonardo DiCaprio. She referred to him as Leo. Maybe she felt that close with him. And what I did was turn to her, and something funny about her is she unofficially started a tradition. On our second floor restaurant, at the end of the shifts, whoever made the most tips of that night, we will run at the end of, you know, the balcony and stretch her arms out and, you know, duplicate that scene where she will scream, you know, because she's a lady, she will scream, "I am the queen of the world." So for us guys, when it was our turn that we made, you know, the most tip that night, we will go out there to, like I said, it's an unofficial tradition. We will scream to the world that we were the kings. Not to take a detour, the reason why I bring her up is the best way that I was able to explain it to her. I said to her, remember that scene where, you know, the Titanic is sinking and everybody is in chaos? The Titanic sinks, but the music band keeps playing in the middle of this chaotic situation. So I said to her, we are the band. And her reaction, you know, was priceless. I could see the sparkles in her eyes, you know, the ear-to-ear smile, even though she was wearing a face mask. She understood that during a global pandemic, our nutrition services continued to serve. And it only took that, I guess, for her to understand what we do. And we might not be a band, but let's face it, we continue to serve during the pandemic, and that is just who we are. And I think what I've learned is that we need to be more involved, not only with our district, but also with our community, so we can continue to, you know, promote our programs. And one of the ways that we feel that is, you know, this platform, because I know every time I join, I learned something new from you. Hopefully you learned something from me. My contact communications on the screen if you have any questions, or if you want to share your best practice. Let's remember, we're a close community. We help each other. So if you have a best practice you want to share, please do so. We, like I said, we have pre-K through 12th grade, and we are here to help. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for those stories. And I think you hit two things on the head, is the flexibility of school districts and then the opportunity here to connect with parents and share more about the meal programs, especially over the last year. I think it really creates a great foundation for moving forward. So thank you so much for all of that. We're going to go ahead and move on to our last speaker, and we have plenty of time. We're going to get to everybody's questions in the Q&A, so we'll be answering those over the next 10 minutes or so. We'll have some time for a few at the end, but right now I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Craig with Garland Independent School District.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Jennifer Craig, and there's my email there at the bottom. So next slide. Okay, so Garland is in Texas. We're just a little bit northeast of Dallas. And just a little bit about our district. We have 550 employees out in our cafeterias. We have 45 here in our warehouse and office staff. We're a direct ship district, so we do all of our own warehousing of our food. We have 71 sites, and we actually encompass 3 cities, not just Garland. Garland is the biggest, but we also have 2 more affluent suburbs that are Saxe and Rowlett that are part of our district. Our overall free and reduced back in 2019 was at 65%. Next slide. Okay, so we do offer, and this is just a small number of them now that we're all, most of us have been serving free and will continue to. We do operate all the programs, anything that's out there, we're doing it at some school somewhere. Because we do have 3 different communities that we serve, I know that Ms. Miller was kind of talking about pockets here and there. We do the same thing. So we have our schools that qualify for universal free. Those are the ones that we do BICN. There's 28 of those. We also previously had CEP at 24 of our campuses, so 24 out of 71, so not all of them. We do have breakfast carts in our high schools and middle schools as another point of service. We operate CACFP as well, and this school year that just finished, we did SFSP, and we were both virtual and in person. So the majority stayed virtual, although they were allowed to make a decision after every 9 weeks. So they did slowly filter back, but it started out at about 60-40 virtual to in-person. It probably turned out about 50-50 or the vice versa of that. 40-60. So they slowly came back, but most of them were virtual. We did have an issue really attracting those virtual students. So we had an extensive curbside meal program, and I guess there are a lot of pictures on here, but the one at the bottom is my chef. And so we tried to do all sorts of marketing around the curbside meals. We had all sorts of giveaways and contests. This was one for family pizza night to really engage those students, but I don't think we ever got more than maybe 15% of those students. But the flip side, we were getting like 90% of our face-to-face students, which is excellent. So we're very happy with that. Next slide. So we're talking about our road back to normal. It does seem like a curvy street to me. We are going to do SSO next year. And just as they just said, we just found out also this week that we are going to be 100% face-to-face. We knew that the vast majority of our students would be, but our district was planning to have an online, like a virtual academy. And they even named it and had a principal and everything, that would be the hub for some of those students who really did excel virtually or still have health needs or whatever, so that we wouldn't lose them to like a homeschool program. So our district had gone pretty far in this process. People had even started applying, and then the Texas legislature ran out of time and didn't meet to vote on it. So none of those virtual programs, we weren't the only district that was planning that. There was other Texas school districts that were planning to have a virtual program as well, that I guess is a no-go because it didn't get voted on for funding. So that was, I'm sure, a disappointment to our district. And it was just, another one of those things where I know everybody's talking about pivot. It's like, okay, well, now we're not doing that. So we've definitely learned to take the changes and keep on rolling. So we do expect decreased enrollment next year because of that. We have been losing some enrollment due to charter schools and stuff like that anyway. So now we really do feel like a lot of those students will look for a homeschooling option. There are several in Texas that are not through an actual school district. So what are we doing for our face-to-face students that will be in our cafeterias again? Our meal service was regulated not so much by the local health department, but it was more our local health services department within our district. We work very closely with that department and the director of that department as to how our meal service can be. So when everybody came back to school face to face, our staff had to hand every child everything when they came through the line. They couldn't get their own milk, they couldn't get their own nap pack, they couldn't get their own pre-portioned fruit. So that was difficult for our staff to adjust to. It was fortunate and not fortunate that the numbers in school were decreased because there were still some virtually learning. Definitely when we go back to school next year and we have everyone in person, and we were getting like 90% of the face-to-face students this year. I don't expect that the number will be that high next year, but I do expect it to be high. So that will definitely be a challenge. We're still trying not to use shared utensils. I know there was some talk about salad bars or whatever. We're trying not to have the students touch each other's tongs or whatever, but we have been allowed to, they can grab a nap pack, they can grab their milk, they can grab a pre-portioned fruit without, worried that somebody else may have touched it. So what we're discussing is how to reinvent what were our kind of option bars. So we had a ramen bar. How is that? How are you going to get the vegetables for that? Or we have kind of a Chiloso themed Mexican bar in high school, and we've been sort of cupping up all the condiments for that. So that's also more labor and more time. So we're discussing how that's going to do. Are we going to put it on in the back? So those are the main challenges we're looking at, and that really mainly is in high school. Our lower grades do not have those the same kind of top your own, make it your own bar selections as the high school does. We don't know if we are going to do weekend meals. For sure we'll do after school supper, and as needed. That's a program that we've run for years, and we very well may continue to roll that into weekends. We were going to have that be part of our virtual menu option for the virtual school. And now that we're not doing that, we're sort of in the talks as to exactly what that would look like to serve weekend meals. In order to get socioeconomic data, since we're not going to be doing applications, we worked together to make that form part of the registration process. So every student, even if they're returning, has to fill out registration paperwork every year. And that is a form that is included in that packet. So every family will have to fill that out as part of their packet. And as far as lessons learned, my biggest thing for sure is teamwork, but it's our staff. I mean, it has really been amazing the things that our staff has done and championed through and really been there. And I know everybody else in the school nutrition community, it's not just my district, everybody's really been that way. And it's been very hard on our staff. Curbside feeding is very challenging, putting it all together and the bagging and the delivering after hours or staying out there after hours. And our staff was really tired. But so they really are looking forward for a summer break. And so, as I said, on our road to normal, we are just looking forward to getting back to normal life. I really think that it appears at this point, who knows, but at this point, our district will be fairly well operating as we did in prior years. So we're really not planning on doing anything special or changing much other than we would normally make menu changes in a year anyway. So, you know, we're adding some coffee, we're adding a deli line, but none of that is pandemic related. We're just looking forward to getting back to normal is our plan. So, next slide. And then I would say we have talked a lot about sharing within the community. Please, you know, this is our social media for our department. Please follow us because we're probably following you. I think it is great how we all collaborate and we have forums like this to discuss plans for what you're doing. I always get ideas from other people's social media. So please feel free to follow us and continue to share the great things that I know is also going out on in everyone else's district. So thank you so much, Frack and everybody, for your time.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I love the idea of having that form as part of registration for school. So we are at time. I feel like that was such a great conversation, and I don't want to dive into the questions because I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So we will follow up with our speakers, get those answered, and share that out with a follow-up. So everybody will get the recording and any of the new resources that we have. But again, want to be mindful of everybody's time, know that everyone's really busy. So I just wanted to go ahead and thank our speakers so much. So thank you, Amanda, Ladislaw, and Jennifer for joining us and for sharing your expertise. We really appreciate it. And yeah, at that, we'll go ahead and close. We'll still send out the recording and the resources, but if there's anything that we can do in the meantime for you, feel free to reach out to us. We're always here. So thank you all so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.